So what we're seeing here is essentially the giant cope around emulation as a concept completely collapsing. Because the entire narrative was that, like, yeah, we have these games for free, and everyone can download these games for free. Actually, you don't even need to download them because they're built into browsers now. They're so successful and popular, and they have so much sex.
Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you're all having a great day today. So for the past few weeks, there have been rumors and leaks that Pokemon firered and leafgreen would be coming to the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2. Well, recently they were put up onto the eShop for $20 each for pre-order. Now, this is $20 each, not $20 for both games, and these are games that came out back on the Game Boy Advance. Also, there is no online or basic features like widescreen, so this is a complete ripoff. And of course, with this being on the front page of the eShop and it being a complete ripoff, tons of people are talking about this and voicing their criticisms of this, and that made Harman Smith very upset, okay? So he decided to upload a YouTube video complaining that people dare have criticisms towards these old-ass games getting re-released for this absurd price. He titled his YouTube video, "Broke Weirdos Are Too Poor to Pay $20 for a Pokemon Game," which we're already starting off with a classic fanboy argument. Oh, you don't like the price of this? You don't like the value proposition of this? You're just poor, dude. It's such a pathetic way to wave away legitimate criticisms towards a product or its price. And out of every group of fanboys, I see Nintendo fanboys default to this more than any other group of fanboys. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and play his YouTube video and see if he makes any valid arguments.
I'm so poor that I can't even pay $20 for a Pokemon game.
We're already off to a great start here. We have Harman Smith in the cheapest looking basement I have ever seen, mocking other people for not wanting to drop 20 buckaroos for a Game Boy Advance game that's missing basic features like online play. If these games came out, you got both of them for $20, they added online play and things like wonder trading from the 3DS Pokemon games, I might consider buying it. But I'm not gonna spend 20 bucks for an old-ass Pokemon game that is missing basic features, and if that makes me quote-unquote poor, then so be it, man.
Like, imagine being this broke and this desperate.
You call other people desperate, but I see you here desperate to defend this multi-billion-dollar corporation that doesn't even know you exist.
Imagine spending all of your time unemployed, sitting in your parents' basement, spurging out.
Don't those words right there describe your entire YouTube channel, bro? Let's be real, with the way that this guy acts, I doubt he could hold down a job.
Imagine spending all of your time unemployed, sitting in your parents' basement, spurging out about Nintendo charging you for a Pokemon game.
Are these people really spurging out, or are they just voicing their criticisms, which they are allowed to do? If I'm gonna be honest, the only person spurging out here is you, the 30-year-old man who is upset that people don't want to overpay for Pokemon games that came out 20 years ago.
That's been the past couple of days when it comes to Pokemon firered and leafgreen. You know, this incredibly well-received game is getting a re-release. It's going to be the best-selling game this week. It's going to outdo Resident Evil Requiem. It's going to outdo Tales of Berseria. It is a celebration of Pokemon's 30 years of relevance.
It's a pretty bad 30-year celebration to just re-release two old-ass games missing basic features that people expect out of games nowadays and pricing them at $20 each.
And people like Nintendian can try and cope all they want and call it lazy.
Re-releasing games is pretty much the definition of lazy, especially if you don't change anything. You're just taking an old-ass game and selling it again. Hell, I would argue most remakes and remasters today are lazy, let alone re-releases.
You can't call it lazy when you have other Pokemon products that have come out recently that you can buy instead.
So because other Pokemon products exist that you can buy, a different Pokemon product can't be lazy. This makes no sense at all, man.
This is just a re-release of an old game.
Which is pretty much by definition lazy.
So every single narrative that has been propped up about this game regarding the price point, involving the game they chose the re-release, and regarding the entire situation, all of it has fallen apart. But what I find interesting about this is just the massive double standard when it comes to the price point. Because what we have seen with this specific release is that we have seen a pure 180 flip, okay? A complete flip-flop from the community, who have spent the past several years bitching about, like, Nintendo Switch Online, about how they want to own games, how they don't want to, like, subscribe to a subscription service that is tied into general online play, by the way. How they don't want to support this, how they want to buy games on the eShop. If only Nintendo were to do it. Okay, here you go. No, not like that!
This is true. We do want to buy games on the eShop instead of on an online service, but we also want those games to be reasonably priced, and I don't think that's a insane thing for us to expect.
You know, $20 is perfectly reasonable for a game like this.
$20 for a 20-year-old game that they took and just slapped onto a new console with no modern changes to it is not reasonable, bro. Stop coping.
Like, especially considering Pokemon is the biggest brand in the world. The idea that people have that, like, well, this is too expensive because the game is old. Yeah, guess what, bro? If you buy this game secondhand, it's like $160.
This is probably the stupidest argument I have ever heard. We're talking about second-hand games here. The reason why some second-hand games are so expensive is because they have limited copies of them out there. Whereas with this game that they're re-releasing, there is infinite copies because it is on the eShop to download. With that logic, there are games out there that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars because there's probably like one copy of them left on Earth. Would it be justified for the publisher to re-release that game at $500? I don't fucking think so.
You know, what are you talking about? And don't sit there and try and tell me that, like, well, you can just emulate it for free. No, you can't actually.
You wanna bet?
Because you will not be able to engage with the general player base, with the trading features, with play, you know, local play, the way you would with actual physical hardware. The player pool, by its nature, is going to be a lot smaller through that method.
But are people even really doing local play anymore? I mean, most people that I know, when they want to play games with their friends or engage in any sort of way on a game with their friends, they just use the internet. Local play is very outdated in terms of gaming, and that's why most games don't even bother including split screen anymore. So most people who would play this game on an emulator like their phone probably weren't going to use the local play features in the first place, so who really cares?
So what we're seeing here is essentially the giant cope around emulation as a concept completely collapsing. Because the entire narrative was that, like, yeah, we have these games for free, and everyone can download these games for free. Actually, you don't even need to download them, because they're built into browsers now. They're so successful and popular, and they have so much sex. You know, that was the narrative.
Dude, how the fuck do I even respond to this? Is there even a way I can respond to this? Nah, I'm just gonna play the clip again.
And they have so much sex! For years and years, that, like, ROMs and emulators would somehow, like, replace the Pokemon Company because the Pokemon Company isn't producing high quality enough products.
Nobody is claiming that emulation or emulators is going to replace the Pokemon Company. And if someone is saying that, they're an idiot. But the fact that some people, especially hardcore Pokemon fans, have to go back and use emulators to get an enjoyable Pokemon experience is pretty pathetic. The last time Pokemon released a really great game was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire on the fucking 3DS, bro. I was in middle school when I got that game as a Christmas gift a month after it came out. That was 12 years ago, man. I feel old. Holy shit. I will say that Pokemon Sun and Moon had some cool ideas and the game was cool. However, there was way too much hand-holding for me to consider that a great Pokemon game.
And here we have a pretty definitive example of how that is not the case at all. It's kind of amazing, actually, seeing how this game is getting re-released, how it's getting so much hype and so much enthusiasm, and how the Pokemon hate community just can't do anything to downplay it.
We don't have to try to downplay the game. The game already downplayed itself by costing $20 and missing basic features.
You know, they can't get people to download the ROMs or the emulators.
Wait until this dude realizes how many people use Pokemon ROM hacks.
They can't get people to think that this is a bad game.
Nobody thinks Pokemon Fire-Red and Leaf-Green are bad video games. We think this is a bad value for $20, considering all the things surrounding this game.
They can't get people to think this is lazy or unintuitive or like...
Bro, everyone already thinks this is lazy, and I guarantee you most of the people buying this game still think it's lazy.
Like, we were told, a while, all this throughout, since Gen 7, Gen 6, like, old Pokemon was better. Pokemon was better back in the day. And, here we go. Old Pokemon game. People should be excited. And instead what we get is senseless bitching.
When people say old Pokemon is better, they don't mean go and re-release the old Pokemon games. They mean make new Pokemon games in the same format that they made the old games in. The classic catching mechanics, the classic world building, shit like that. And if you are going to re-release old Pokemon games, make sure they're up to today's standards when it comes to features, so things like online should be a no-brainer. Also, make sure to price them appropriately.
Bitching that isn't going to get the community anywhere.
So us quote-unquote bitching isn't going to get the community anywhere, but you blindly bootlicking for a subpar product is? Okay, bro.
And I do think this is like a pretty straightforward example of just how the anti-Nintendo discourse is just completely fucked. Because if you try and say this is like an old game and not worth getting excited about, you're just going to set the stage for Gen 10's inevitable reveal this week. Okay? Like, you are setting yourself up for failure, essentially. And that's kind of what we're seeing now, is that the Pokemon Company is killing it so thoroughly that, like, these hate channels just can't do anything to keep up with it.
The Pokemon Company is quote-unquote killing it? Really, dude? Because last time I checked, people think Pokemon Legends ZA, the latest Pokemon product, is terrible. People are calling it the worst Pokemon game ever released, and they're quote-unquote killing it?
You know what I mean? Like, and this is like the reoccurring trend lately, I feel like. It's just, if we don't have anything else to complain about, we're just going to complain about the price point. Like, that's our last stand, resort, is that we're just going to complain about the price for everything, and, like, that'll somehow win. But, like, what? You're complaining about a game that costs $20. Okay? You're complaining about $20 fucking dollars.
No, we're complaining about a game that costs $20 that is missing basic features and is one of the laziest ports of all time. You can scream, it's only $20, dude, it's only $20, all you want, but the value proposition is still not there in my opinion, and obviously in a lot of other people's opinions too.
Like, you can see on Twitter just how many people are, like, just kind of, like, clowning on them for this. I've seen so many images of guys shoving, like, $20 bills into their Nintendo Switches and stuff like that. Like, $20 ain't shit, okay? Like, it's like, if you're really complaining about 20 fucking bucks, people aren't going to take you seriously going forward. And honestly, I kind of feel the same way about, like, the $80 games and, like, the Mario Tennis Ace Fever costing like $70. Like, we see everyone complaining about the price point for these games, and, like, the simple solution is to just, like, well, don't buy it right away. Just wait another week. Make some money. Go out and get them. Like, when you can afford it. Like, I don't understand why the community, especially if you're like a successful gaming YouTube channel who presumably makes money off of covering this stuff. Like, I don't understand why there's this huge prevalent notion that the price point is somehow going to like limit this game's appeal or like stop people from picking it up.
This dude genuinely can't understand why people are upset over higher price points on their favorite hobby. It's like, dude, this shit is common sense. People are more strapped for cash than they have ever been in today's economy, and gaming is a form of escapism. So when that escapism becomes more and more expensive, it is obviously going to piss people off. I'm talking about $80 games when I say this, but let's talk about the $20 price point for Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. You used to be able to buy Game Boy Advance games for like $6 on the Nintendo eShop back in the day with Virtual Console, and now it's $20, so there's an increase there too.
Because it's very observable to me that that's just not happening. And like one of the weird things about this is just how often people just kind of ignore the price point of other video games and how they exclusively go after Nintendo. You know, Mario Tennis Fever, the only criticism people have about it right now is this idea that like, well, it shouldn't be $70.
Personally, I have not played Mario Tennis Fever, so I cannot speak on its price point and if it's worth it or not, but if any of you guys in the comment section have played this game and you want to inform me, feel free to go ahead.
I've gotten more mileage out of Mario Tennis Fever than I have, like, most games, okay? Like, I am very happy with my purchase, and I feel like people just don't have that mentality. Like, you know, that whole narrative of, it's just tennis, like, doesn't hold up, like, at all. And the same can be said for Pokemon, you know what I mean? Like, if your big, epic cope, like, the reason you're not going to buy this game is because of the $20 price point, you need to rethink your priorities. You need to, like, cut back on your grocery bill. You need to, like, start budgeting. You need to, like, start getting a better job. You need to start, like, thinking about your life as a whole, honestly. Like, you need to stop embarrassing yourselves so thoroughly and grow up.
And here we have it, folks, a Nintendo fanboy telling you to spend less money on groceries, you know, something you need to survive, and spend that money on Pokemon instead. This is just elite levels of fanboyism on display right here. And then to top it all off, after making this embarrassing ass video, he says, "Stop embarrassing yourselves." Anyway, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like. If you didn't like this video, you can leave a dislike. I did not expect for this shit to be like 18-19 minutes. I'll try to cut it down a little bit. But yeah, really appreciate you guys watching, and yeah, I'll see you next time.